I feel that transparency is one of the key attributes for success. And I have seen where companies don't have the right uh, don't have the right messaging that goes throughout, right? That's shared across the company in a very transparent way, and that has been an impediment for growth for many companies. And I've noticed that because transparency brings everyone to the same page, right? And it allows people to express things in a candid way, right? And it makes sure that the leaders as well as people in the front lines and everyone is speaking the same language, which is very important. And the notion of having a right, honest approach to things, that all of those kinds of things are sort of blended into the concept of transparency.
Welcome to Growth Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we look at culture, specifically transparent culture, and the impact that that has on the organization. We study fast growth companies, and I really am excited about this interview today because we're going to bring to you Syed Ishaqui. It's hard for me to pronounce that, but hopefully I did the best I can. He is the founder CEO of AvistaTech. They're in Atlanta, Georgia. They really help high-end consulting companies. Really, they are a high-end consulting company for the IT world, and they do some staff augmentation and the high demand roles. All of that to be said is he's got a team of highly technical and in-demand employees and engineers, and they have to create a place where they will continue to work. And so we unpacked the transparent culture here on this episode. The interview will dive into some of the things that they do differently than others, whether it be financial transparency or candid conversations. We unpack all of that in today's interview with Syed. My job is to help you be the best leader you can be, to help you really evolve beyond where you are today. If you're challenged to figure out how to grow or how to grow the people inside your company, then you want to make sure we get a chance to talk about your business. We can help you identify specifically what's getting in the way of your growth so that you can create predictable success. All you have to do is go to genehammett.com and schedule your call. Inside that conversation, I will use 10 years of experience of helping fast growth companies to help you identify what's standing in your way. You may be hesitant to actually reach out and call. I get it. You're busy. You probably think I'm busy. But I keep a little bit of time each month to connect with my audience, connect with people that really want to grow their business. You may not want to hire me right now. That's fine. But if we got together, we connected about your business and we understood what was going on, I'd love to be able to help you in that way. Who knows? Maybe we'll work together sometime down the road. Now, back to the interview with Syed. Syed, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. We're going to have a great conversation about transparency. It's one of the big topics I love to dive into with leaders. Before we get there, tell us about your company, AvistaTech.
So AvistaTech is a company that does high-end consulting in the technology space. When I say technology, we're talking about information systems, complex systems, data-oriented things, services, and things of that nature, as well as staffing for high-end roles that are not easy to fill, right? Because the difference is there are other recruiting companies, but they're owned by recruiters. They're not owned by technologists, and that brings a big value add. Because we're technologists and we know exactly how to sort of look into technology and get the right people in front of the right parties.
Syed, for years now, there's been such a need for high technology workers and whatnot. Are you seeing any kind of relief on the horizon for this, or just more demand on top of more demand?
I'm seeing more demand on top of more demand. I mean, some of the newer areas, when you talk about, a lot that happens from the cloud perspective, things that are happening from the artificial intelligence and machine learning and things like that. I feel that the industry and the needs and the jobs, there's a high demand.
Well, I want to dive into the big key area about, your company growing to the level it has. And you had, shared with our team that it's about transparency. Why is transparency such an important piece to creating the culture and the team that you need?
I feel that transparency is one of the key attributes for success. And I have seen where companies don't have the right uh, don't have the right messaging that goes throughout, right? That's shared across the company in a very transparent way. And that has been an impediment for growth for many companies. And I've noticed that because transparency brings everyone to the same page, right? And it allows people to express things in a candid way, right? And it makes sure that the leaders as well as people in the front lines and everyone is speaking the same language, which is very important. And the notion of having a right honest approach to things, that all of those kinds of things are sort of blended into the concept of transparency.
A lot of people immediately go to the financial transparency. Let's break this down because I think there's some other elements behind that. You talked about the candid conversations and whatnot. Do you believe in financial transparency?
So financial transparency is also important, I think, right? And that what that does is it allows people to see where you are, right, in your growth and where you're headed. If there isn't much financial transparency, then the people that are actually doing the work for you, because you can't run the company on your own. I mean, it's a team, right? And the team has to understand where you are and where you're headed, because that bleeds into the actual strategy of the company. So having financial transparency is paramount.
Now, some people would say that, you can't share financials with people. And I don't know, there is a line, I call this the transparency line. I've talked about this so much. I've got little names for things. But the transparency line is what you believe is okay to share. How would you define the transparency line relative to your financials?
I really don't have a line like that, right? I mean, here's the thing: as a leader of the company, you have to you have, first of all, you have to focus on bringing in the right people into your firm, right? You have to make sure that the people you're bringing in are people who have good intentions, people who work hard, and people who are honest, right? And when you have a team like that, then it's completely okay and good to share those kinds of details, because you have to look for growth. You really have to rely on your team, and that kind of reliance is it's rooted in having that kind of transparency. You can't do it without that, at least not for me.
Now, Syed's been talking about financial transparency. Now, you may think it's okay to share the good of what's going on, and I get it. Everyone likes to celebrate the things that are good that are happening, but you also want to be able to share the bad and the ugly. The bad and the ugly are the things that you don't really want to share with people. They're things that you might be a little bit afraid to share. You might be afraid that they lose engagement, or they might be looking at some other opportunities because they feel like it's not a safe place to be. But I think the benefits outweigh that fear. Sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly with your people creates a bond and a level of trust. And many times those people are willing to rally for you. They're coming up with ideas. They're coming up with ways to make money or save money. And if you didn't trust them, you'd never get those ideas. But by trusting them, by truly treating them like adults and partners and owners, you will be able to have those kind of different conversations and share those ideas. Share the good and bad and ugly, even in finances. Now back to Syed. Let's take a real focus on the other aspects of transparency. One of them being the kind of conversations you have. You talked about candid conversations and about really being able to share with people. I think this goes two ways, right? So employees should be able to receive difficult conversations, but they should also be able to give them as well to others and even up the leadership chain, if you will. When you think about the conversations around transparency, what would you add to that?
I would say, and I've been blessed to have good mentors in my past. And what I've learned is, you have to, there's a reason to have certain hierarchies in place. And then there's a reason to sort of have an open environment where people are able to communicate in a candid fashion, right? So what I do is, as a rule of thumb, not only do we speak a lot about transparency, I tell people that I have an open door policy, right? So anyone is open to come to me and ask tough questions, ask, or share things about other people they may potentially have issues with, or even say any positives that they may have to say. But that's something, and when I have meetings with people, what I do is I ask them questions as well. And, I am open with them so that they feel that, hey, when the CEO of the company is open with you, there's less, they don't have to hold back, right? And then that's something that helps it out.
Is there anything around these that you've learned about candid conversations that have, you would share with others, like something that maybe you didn't think before? For example, a lot of people believe you don't share, you don't give feedback to leaders. Is there a certain element that you could share with us around candid conversations that you've learned over your years of, really sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly with employees?
Absolutely. I have noticed that the transparency and the candid conversations, they don't happen overnight. It's something that you have to build upon, right? So you have conversations and you're open to people that work with you, and then they open up a little bit more. And as you have those conversations, as you build those relationships, then you truly breed the culture of transparency. So it doesn't happen overnight, and I've learned that it's a journey, and you have to constantly work towards it.
You work with a lot of people that would probably describe themselves as very logical. They don't want to talk about their feelings. They don't want to talk about the things that are, kind of going on behind the scenes. Have you found that hard to get them to open up and be transparent with you?
It's not easy at times. Yes, I agree, especially in the technology sector that, in which we work. People, when you're talking to hardcore engineers, they're very, yes and no shades of gray. And so it does become difficult at times. And so you can start by asking questions that are open-ended, right? So, things about family, things about what they like, what they dislike. And I've noticed that people, when people don't talk to you as much, it's not because they're holding anything back. It's just their nature. And when they open up very well. Even the hardcore engineers.
When you look at your style of leadership, is there anything other than transparency that you feel like has helped your company really be where it is today?
I would say transparency and accountability, right? So that is another thing that you have to inculcate within the teams, right? So first off, you have to start off by being accountable yourself. Are you accountable? Are you going to be held accountable to the statements that you're making, right? And then are you doing the same for people that are working in your teams? And so accountability is something that's also a key contributing factor, I think, having a culture like that.
Now, Syed said that it starts with you, and I agree. Every time you look at accountability and you think about accountability, it starts with you. You have to be a person of your word. The easiest way to understand this, and a lot of people have heard this phrase before, but lead by example. When you lead by example, you are willing to be honorable to your word, have high integrity, and you expect that of others. You've got to start with yourself first. There's many times I have talked to different founders and CEOs about what they wanted to be different inside their teams. And if I asked them really directly, they would say, oh, well, we don't do that way. We expect them to, but we don't do it. And you see how that's out of alignment. Lead by example. If you have any questions about what that means, all you have to do is sit down and really ponder that question. Are you truly leading by example at the highest level possible? If you're not, then that's an issue that you need to address. If I can help you in any way, make sure you let me know. Now back to Syed. When you are holding people accountable, a lot of people don't want to micromanage. And they have this made up story inside their head that if I have to ask you, did you complete it? Where are we on that project? That it crosses the line into micromanagement. I don't think it does. I think it's just part of the natural conversation of us seeing where things are. Do you have any of those issues that you've had to deal with in your leadership journey?
To an extent, right? I mean, but once again, if people, when they start viewing you as someone who's candid, someone who's transparent, then the conversation, the conversation regarding accountability is not a threatening conversation in a way, right? As in terms of meeting the numbers as an example, right? Forecasts or sales forecasts as an example. Then it's not. Then the people who are actually doing it, they know that the person that they're speaking with is open and transparent and candid. Then they can open up and say that they can talk about why something didn't happen or shape up the way they had intended. And it has to do with, and they know that the person that's listening to them is going to be logical about it as opposed to being just emotional, right? So it goes hand in hand.
Accountability and transparency have created the space for your people to excel at what they do. My question for you is, how do you continue to retain the talented people of your company? Because as technology workers demand is out there, is there anything you're doing specifically to retain the talent that you have?
That's a tough question, to be honest. I mean, right now with the demand and the attrition rates and things like that, it's not something that's easy. There isn't a silver bullet, and it varies from person to person, right? I mean, some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by the type of work that they're going to be doing, the area in which that they're focused on. Some people, some people prefer to take Friday afternoons off, as an example, right? And they want to work hard for 4.5 days, and then the rest, so it varies. And you have to be able to understand what motivates them, and really, make sure that it's a place where they want to be and a place where they want to stick around, right? Because because if employees are not, if they're unhappy and they're doing the job that they're supposed to do, they're not going to do a super job. And so it's eventually going to hurt you anyway.
You're about 70 employees now, and I'm curious, what are the inflection points when you look back on the business? For example, was it at 10 people you guys went through some challenges you had to work through, or did you get to 20, or was it 50?
There wasn't a set number, but we had to keep we had to focus on how many sort of mid-management resources that we would employ based on the growth that we were experiencing, because obviously all 70 people couldn't report to just one person, right, as an example. So those were some of the the toggling points. And then when you do that, do you bring someone from the outside, or do you groom people within the team so that they're able to take leadership roles within the company? And we have used the latter. And because that's more rewarding, it helps people stay around. And then the rest of the people that are there, because look, everyone wants some kind of growth, right? No one just wants to continue to do the same job and just, I'm sure there's a small percentage of people who do that, but in general, right? So you have to make sure you do that.
Since you are growing people, which I agree with this approach, if it can work for you, and I know there's some times when it makes sense to bring in more experienced people, but if you're growing them up, what have you learned about investing in people and truly getting them the skills to level up to be better leaders, better managers?
You have to give them you have to give them access to yourself and the other leaders in the company. That's number one. They have to be able to sort of shadow you, see how you do things, see how you are interacting with different stakeholders per se, right? Customers, suppliers, and other people. And that's the yes, obviously they can take courses and things like that, and we do that too. But more than that, it has to do with them shadowing other leaders and learning from them.
You were also had the honor of not just being on Inc. 5000, but the Great Places to Work. Give us just some insights around why you went after that and what it's done for your business.
We haven't measured it in terms of tangible returns, right? However, it gives us pleasure to know that we're a great place to work, because people in today's economy, to attract and retain talent is critical. And to showcase that you're one of the best places to work, that's very important, right? Because you can attract better talent that way. I mean, when I used to look for companies to work for in the past, that was one of the things I looked for, right? I mean, is that a place where I'm going to be happy? Is that a place where most people are feeling good about themselves and what they do? So that's why I'm sure it has done lots of positives, but I don't have a tangible mark for that.
Syed, we've been having a great conversation around transparent culture and what that really has done for your business. Is there anything that we've left out that you want to make sure that we bring forward?
I can't think of anything else other than what we've discussed, on this topic.
Let me ask you one final question. Is there a mistake that you've made in your journey that we could all learn from?
I'm sure I've made several mistakes. And the number one I used to think about was when I first started the company, was that the right decision, right? Because everything takes time. But in terms of a mistake, yes, there are times I'm foolishly optimistic, but I don't call that a mistake, right? You as a founder and as the leader of the company, you have to be optimistic. So that's something that I've worked on, where I'm not overly optimistic. I'm sort of, I'm a little bit more cautious.
I think a lot of people listening in here that are founders and CEOs would all call themselves optimistic. So you're in good company. Syed, thank you for being here on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Wow, what a powerful interview. I love this concept of transparency inside of organizations. I use it within my own company. I share full transparency on revenues and even profits with my team. It is an amazing kind of way to look at it, because I want them to feel like they're on the inside, not on the outside. We also practice the kind of transparency around, we can have honest conversations about things. If I drop the ball on something, I want people to call me on it. I don't want them to think that I can't handle it. And I want them to be able to handle when I am disappointed or I'm not getting the expectations I need from the work that they're doing. It goes both ways. Hopefully you have the kind of transparency you want in your organization. If not, I believe that this episode will give you some guidance to that fact. If there's anything I can do to help you grow your business, make sure you reach out and let me know. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, with courage. We'll see you next time.